My name is Gemma Sanderson and I'm a class teacher at Kirkland Logger Primary School in Fife. We're a small rural school with just 2 classes, so I normally teach primary 1 to 3, but I've also taught our primary 4 to 7s as well. And what I wanted to share with you today was just some of the ways that I've embedded, computing science, computational thinking across the curriculum. So, as Louise already shared, Barefoot is a fab resource, and as she's shared with us, computational thinking is all about solving problems. And what Barefoot have done is they've split this into the concepts and approaches, and this is one of their posters that I have got pride of place in my classroom, and it is something that I'm always referring to. It's a really good starting point as well, because some of the terms you might look at them and think, oh my gosh, I have no idea what these mean. But once you have a look and you start to understand what it is and you realise the links to everyday life, for example, the algorithms one, you start to realise that it's something that's quite easy to embed into your classroom. One thing I want to share is that on the Barefoot computing website, they've got a teacher resource section, and within this, they've broken down all the concepts and approaches, and each one they've got a really good explanation of what this means in computing science terms, but also what this means in kind of everyday life and how you can make links across the curriculum. So after today, if you're sitting there and thinking, right, I need to go and learn some more, I would recommend signing up to the Barefoot website. Go and have a look in the teacher area and have a little look through these bits here, and you'll find you'll be able to click on these and you can learn some more. The other thing that I really like is that it reinforces that computational thinking is something that we can all do, and it isn't something that needs to be saved for, an ICT lesson as such. It's something that can be used across the curriculum, and it's something that you can be doing, linking to other areas as well. And it helps to make those links with the children. For example, making jam sandwiches and things like that. You're linking that in for them. So algorithms is a really good place to start. I always think that it's a really good place to start because it's one that really engages the learners straight away. And put simply, it's just a set of instructions. And the example I always like to use with the children is, maybe making your breakfast in the morning, if you're making toast, or getting your cereal ready, or getting dressed. You talk about the order that we're doing this in. I've introduced these in many ways. This one here is actually from the Barefoot website. It's their crazy character algorithm activity. And what you do is you give your learners a set of instructions and they have to draw a crazy character. Now, when you give the instructions to your learners, it's simple things like draw a triangle, draw 3 eyes, add 2 legs, add 1 wing. And very quickly, they'll draw this down for you. They'll show you at the end, and you can see that everybody has got something slightly different. And this is where you start to use your questioning and ask them, well, why has everyone got something different? And they start to tell you, well, you didn't tell us what type of triangle to draw, depending on the age of children you've got there. You didn't tell us where to put the eyes. You didn't tell us where to put the wings and everything like this. So you then send them away to create their own algorithm. And this is an example here from a primary 2. And you can see that they can just quite simply draw, add, they can draw shapes, and they can write in their algorithm. They then pass that to a friend who has a go at following it. And then they get their algorithm back and see if they need to do any editing to it, adding some more detail in, making it more specific. And then they try again with another friend to see if they get it correct. Now, this is something that I have done all the way from primary 1 to 3 up to primary 7. And it's a nice way to get some writing into there as well. And it's something that can be easily differentiated. You could be supporting your learners by saying they can draw shapes, you can give them keywords and lots of things like that. Another activity that we've really enjoyed is looking at that kind of rhyme, head, shoulders, knees and toes, printing out the different body parts and then getting the learners to order them in the way that the song goes, and then getting them to create their own little version. And with this, you can see in this picture here, they've just quite simply laid out the cards on the table. And then with that, you can start adding in things like repeating lines or repeating the whole thing. Start adding things like loops into them. And as you're doing that, you're introducing that language of computing science to them. Louise mentioned earlier about dance algorithms. We've got a little example here. This was one that we did during the periods of remote learning. we set our learners a little challenge to create an algorithm for a dance, and they got a chance to video it and then share it with the class on Teams. Again, you can see here you can start to introduce things like repeating and loops. And of course, in a PE lesson in the school, you could expand on this and get them to create their own dance moves, drawing up their own little cards that they're going to use to lay out an algorithm, see if somebody else can follow it. And then one of my favourite things to do is baking. And gingerbread is always a favourite one to do in school. And here, you can focus on the order of your instructions. What do we do first? Do we need to get the butter out first? Do we need to get the flour? What are the order for our steps? And again, this is something that I've just got some board maker symbols here that I've used. You could cut these up, put them in different orders, get them to order them first, try it out, see if it's going to work, and then you can go ahead and bake some tasty gingerbread. With all of these, I've found that my learners have really enjoyed using that language of computational thinking. They've really enjoyed saying things like algorithms. It's quite a fun word to say, and I think it makes them feel like they're doing something, really important and really real for them. They also like using things like debugging. So that is where you've maybe got a little problem in your algorithm and you have to go back and see if you can fix it. They also like the term tinkering, which is where you're just experimenting, you're just playing. So here they could be tinkering by putting the body parts in different orders, trying it out to see if they've got the right order for head, shoulders, knees and toes. And all of these lessons here haven't specifically been, say, an ICT or a digital lesson. They've maybe been a literacy, a numeracy or health and well-being. And these can relate to any curricular areas as well. A couple of other activities that I've really enjoyed doing for computational thinking, kind of going beyond algorithms, is having a look at problem-solving activities. This one here is a river crossing activity. You might have heard it before. It's where you've got a farmer who needs to transport a fox, a hen and a bag of corn across a river. And then you've got some little conditions there. The fox cannot be left with the hen and the hen cannot be left with the bag of corn. So how is the farmer going to get all those items across the river without anything being eaten? This was a really good one to do with my primary 4 to 7s that we did recently. And what they really enjoyed was the drama aspect of this problem. And what they found quite helpful was just acting out each of their possible solutions and just trying to work out how they could solve it. We added an extension to this as well. And we added an additional creature. We added a caterpillar to this problem. And the caterpillar couldn't be left with the corn because it would eat the corn, and it couldn't be left with the hen because the hen would eat the caterpillar. Adding this little fourth element into the problem seemed to really stump them, which was quite interesting because when I gave them the first challenge, straight away they were planning it and they were going, yep, we can do this. And as soon as I added something else, they kind of went, oh, I can't do it, it's too hard. But perseverance, one of those keywords on the Barefoot poster, they kept trying, they kept acting it out. I did have some weird requests. A few of my learners said to me, well, I'm just going to leave the caterpillar, wait for it to turn into its chrysalis and then turn into a butterfly and then it can fly across the river. I said that was very inventive, this thing to think of, and that's what problem solving is all about. Sometimes thinking of those other ways creative ways, let's say, that you could get across. But no, they needed to find a solution before the caterpillar turned into a butterfly. You could, of course, if you're working with older learners, get them to create their own little challenge for the river crossing problem. Is there something that they could create here relating to some areas of science and looking at predator and prey and kind of, right, we've got to get these different animals across, which ones can't be left with each other? Another activity that I've really enjoyed that's looked at logic is using the Sudoku challenges. So that's where you've got your box of numbers and you can only have them going once in each row and each column. You can get these in various different forms. Just a quick search online, I found quite a few that were just using shapes as well, because sometimes numbers can be a little bit daunting to learners because they think they might have to add them or do something else with them. So we did this with shapes, and we have also tried this with numbers. And what we did with this one was I got the learners to work in pairs because they had to explain their reasoning behind filling in each square. And that's a really important thing, is the talking aspect of computational thinking, is getting your learners to talk through what they're thinking, giving those reasons why they're going to do that. And also that predicting side of it as well. Well, if I do that, then hopefully it should do this. If it doesn't, I need to go back and look again, and they can work that through. And this has really helped them to understand that they're using logic there to solve those problems, and also they're looking for patterns. Another resource that has really helped to develop this approach of looking at patterns is a website that I was introduced to on a numeracy webinar that was run by Educational Scotland, and it's called Which One Doesn't Belong. The web address is quite simply wodb.ca. I'll post it in the chat when I've stopped sharing my screen. And this website has got lots of images, so it's just one image and you've got 4 different images there, and you've got to determine which one doesn't belong. They've got all different categories. They've got shapes, numbers, graphs, and they've got incomplete sets. And there's no right answer for any of these. It's all about just having a little think through and giving those reasons why. And that's what I've really enjoyed with that, is that reason why something doesn't belong, that reason why you've noticed that pattern doesn't quite work. And our primary 4 to 7 class have really enjoyed these puzzles. And actually, since introducing this to them, it's actually become part of their morning routine now. So when they come in the morning, they've got a starter activity up on the smartboard, and this has become their starter activity. They've got 2 to choose from of which one doesn't belong, and they've got that time in the morning just to have a little think about it, decide which one they think doesn't belong and their reason behind that. And then they share that as a class and have a really good discussion about looking at those patterns and using some logic there as well. The ways in which you can use these Barefoot resources and other resources such as these on the screen right now are really endless. And I've got a few more that I want to have a look at just to help you with computational thinking. So these are my favourite, Bebop and Probot. Now, I realise that a lot of schools would have had these quite a few years ago, and possibly they are sitting in the backs of cupboards and gathering some dust. So if you're sitting right now and you know in your school they are in a cupboard somewhere, I would really recommend going and digging them out and using them. So if you've not seen them before, if you've not used them for a while, the Bebop is this one here, and it's just a simple device with these 4 arrows. And what learners can do is they can program in the arrows, press go, and the Bebop will follow that program they've put in. The Probot, which is this one over here, is just an extension on that. There's numbers as well as the arrows, and you can start looking at things like angles and moving forward a certain number of times. So you can see that progression of building up those sequences, those algorithms that you're developing there. And what I found really useful with these 2 resources is they really help to kind of apply those ideas about algorithms, but also helping to develop that understanding about decomposition, tinkering and debugging. And also, I really love using these across the curriculum. So if you're sitting there thinking, right, okay, don't actually have any of these in school, or you know what, we've only maybe got 1 or 2 that work and I wouldn't be able to use this with my class, then please do not worry. You can in fact make your own. And it's actually a term that Barefoot have coined themselves. They share a Fakebot, and their Fakebot is quite simply just a printed Bebop on a piece of paper. You could, of course, print these out at your school, but I am well aware that printing budgets are a contentious issue in schools, and you should just make your own. This was something that we did during the period of remote learning. We set our learners a challenge of making their own Bebop at home. They could use paper, card, a paper plate, anything that they had, and what they had to make sure was that it had 4 arrows on there. Now on the arrows they could mark things on like forward, backwards, left and right. They could add other things as well. And this was a really nice thing to do because it gave them a real ownership over what they had created and then what they were going to use. I've also used human Bebots, where learners have taken turns at giving or following directions themselves and then acting as the Bebot and moving through and following those. With any computational thinking activity, what I've always made sure is that it's not too dependent on needing some sort of digital technology. And it also helps in making it accessible for all, and meaning that when we're doing things like this and sharing activities, you're not having to rely too much on these resources. So I've got a little short video here of one of my learners doing this at home, and I'm hoping my sound's going to work, but what I really like is just hearing him talk through his algorithm. So I'll play that just now for you.
Forward, forward, right, forward, forward, left, forward, 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 right, forward, forward, left, forward.
Hopefully you could hear that okay, but no, that's okay. What I love is how
that was great.
he
Sorry,
essentially
Gemma,
uses his
absolutely
Fakebot as a
brilliant.
real Bebop and is pressing on his little arrows that he's drawn on. But what's really important here is the fact that you can hear that thought process that he's got. You know, you can see in the video, he's got his book just down in that corner there. So he's written it out first. He's then saying it out loud again. And then as he is moving his Fakebot around, he is saying that as well, with the kind of robot-y type voice as well, which I think is fab. So the background behind this activity was that we had been learning about directional language, and we've been looking at how we can record these using either words or arrows. Now, depending on your learners, and you'll know them best, whether writing out their instructions using full words like forwards, right and left, or backwards, or using arrows is going to work best for them. And then they were tasked with creating a maze out of any materials they had at home. And you can see this learner here. He chose to use some straws. We had photos and videos of learners using teddy bears to create a little maze. Some had used just bits of paper or books they had at home. Some had Lego and building bricks. You know, it was anything they had around them was what they used. Now, of course, you can apply that in school as well. Look at anything you've got in your classrooms and you could be making a maze out of that. They then had to plan their routes and then test them using their Fakebot. And as you could see in here, he was really successful with that, and I could hear that thought process, which was really good. Oh. So I have replicated this in the classroom, and you can see what we've used is in our PE cupboard, we've got these rubber dots, which have been perfect for making out a little grid for us. So I'd recommend rating your PE cupboard for those. And what we've been doing is practicing moving around our little grid to get to, I think we had a little elf who had to get to the tinsel. We told it was the gold. And then we just had some bits of stickle bricks that we put on to make obstacles. Of course, you could make this as elaborate as you wanted, or just keep it really simple. And the important thing here with the learners for this activity was that recording of their algorithm. And you can see here, this learner here is just quite simply just written the first letter of each word. And I've got little things like this printed out as well, just to help them with that. So this can be related to any context of learning. Here, this was around Christmas time that we're doing this, which was why we had a little elf and a little bit of tinsel. But say you're learning about dinosaurs, the focus could be on creating a safe passage for a dinosaur to avoid volcanoes. You know, the possibilities are endless there. And the key thing here is that they're practicing those key concepts and approaches in computational thinking. You could also challenge, if you've got older learners, you could challenge them to come up with the grid. How big do they want to make it? How small? What type of obstacles are they going to put in? Are they going to add some conditions in? So it could be that you can't go on certain colours. You know, the possibilities are just endless there, which is fab for this. Keeping on the theme kind of with the Bebots and using that idea of that directional language and building those algorithms, what I've really enjoyed is creating our own grids, just using big bits of paper for our Bebots and relating these to books. So this one here was the Lighthouse Keeper's Lunch, and we turned Bebot into Hamish the cat, and Hamish the cat had to travel from the cottage to the lighthouse to deliver Mr. Grinlin's lunch. We then added in things like seagulls, and our seagulls were just wooden blocks that the children had drawn seagulls on and stuck them onto. And this was a really nice way to kind of use that storybook to do a bit of learning around that and just to apply that into different situations. At Christmas, we were looking at coordinates, and again, we created our own grids. They all chose what they wanted to draw in each grid. It was all a Christmas-themed picture. And then they were using the Bebots there to travel around, and they set challenges for each other, saying they had to get to different symbols from starting at one symbol, getting to another, and then looking at the coordinates as well. You don't have to do this on big bits of paper. It could be on A4 or A3 bits of paper, and creating smaller grids here and using something like counters. And it's just about practicing how they're going to plan their movement and then how they're going to record it and then implement that. You can just quite simply make up some little direction cards and print those off, and they could be planning their algorithms that way as well. You'll know your learners best and what's going to work really well for them and what's going to engage them as well. So just to finish up there, once you start exploring the concepts and approaches for computational thinking, you begin to understand how this can link to everyday activities in the classroom. And as Louisa said at the beginning, learners really enjoy using all of these terms to describe their work in the literacy, numeracy, health and wellbeing, and any area of the curriculum. And one thing that I've really enjoyed doing, and is always a groan, and I'm sure you'll agree, is whenever you're doing story writing with your class and you're going to work on editing skills, as soon as you say editing, I always used to get a really big groan about editing because they hated doing it. As soon as I called it debugging, they loved it. And it was just that change of term for them that just really engaged them to it, because they remembered this poster here, they remembered all our work on computational thinking, and they started to enjoy that activity. So if you can find little things like that to help your learners, you'll have them hooked.